All right, let's get the preliminary notes out of the way. A lot of people use the term Model G and Gulenko synonymously, as though everything Gulenko talks about is considered Model G. Gulenko School is called the School of Humanitarian Socionics, and Model G is just one aspect of what they teach. I've actually spoken to students of Gulenko. Uh, yeah, Model G is just one of the ways they look at it. And more importantly than that, it's not how he types people. At least, okay, to clarify, he's different than the modern Western socionist in that he's not typing people in this way of, oh, let's look at this function position, oh, how the mobilizing function is different than the suggestive function because of these function dichotomies, which is a big part of how modern Western socionists would approach typing, type work. Gulenko does not take this approach. His approach is to zoom out and look at the gestalt image of a person when he's typing a client or a celebrity, whatever. He's going to zoom out and first ask himself the question, is this person an extrovert or an introvert? And then he's going to ask himself, is this person irrational or irrational? And then he's going to, sensation versus intuition, logic versus ethics. So basically, his approach to diagnostics, a big part of it, I'm not saying he doesn't go beyond this, but like the bulk of it, in my opinion, is he's zooming out and he's looking at temperament and club. Now that's interesting because you could say modern Western socionists, in terms of their diagnostic approach, just to juxtapose to Gulenko, they're much more, when they're typing people, much more quadra heavy in their focus. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. In fact, you could make a strong argument that because socionics in many ways is a theory of quadras, that should be a big part of your approach to type work, your approach to your diagnostic method. So, of course, modern Western socionists, they're very horny about, for example, the mobilizing function. In many cases, more horny about the mobilizing function than they are about, say, a person's club. Because in their view, the mobilizing function is a valued function, back to quadra values, and it's bold. So, of course, they're going to place a lot of emphasis on something like the mobilizing function. Gulenko, don't get me wrong, Gulenko loves quadras. He talks a lot about quadras. What I'm saying is that in his type work, he might mention, like I've seen different people's written assessments that Gulenko has sent to them. I'm not saying he doesn't mention quadras in his type work, but his primary diagnostic tool is that zooming out and looking at the gestalt image. So yeah, it's not going to be so much this very he's not, and this is why people they try to type people with the Model G positions. Like, he's not using Model G or Model A in terms of in his type work actually going to each individual position in this really rigid fashion and being well, what this person's doing fits what we know about, the function dichotomies for the mobilizing function or the demonstrative or the role function. Like, he is not approaching type work in that way, the way people in the Western socionics community are, where they're really people in the West will go through the Model A positions, or if they're trying to use Model G, they'll go through the Model G positions and try to like apply. That is not how Gulenko doesn't really, in my opinion, get super locked in to the function positions when he's doing type work. He does kind of in the sense that when it comes to his social mission block, that will apply. That blocking will very much apply to this Gestalt image approach he takes, where he's looking at the temperament and club, because that is the social mission block. If he's talking about an SLE, notice the social mission block. What are we talking about? Well, we're talking about an extrovert type who is sensation and logics. So what's in the social mission block? Extroverted sensing and extroverted logic. Because it's that Gestalt image. He's not. It's almost like, imagine going back to MBTI letter dichotomies and not knowing anything about cognitive functions and just looking at the letters ESTP. And if you knew nothing about cognitive functions, you'd go, well, this is an extrovert and this is sensing and thinking. Likewise, Gulenko's social mission block, what's there? Well, it's telling you this person's an extrovert and that it's sensing, thinking. Notice the social mission block for an extrovert will be 2 extroverted functions, and the social mission block for an introvert will be 2 introverted functions. And then, if they're an irrational function, if they're an irrational type, obviously the irrational function will be in the leading position. And if they're a rational type, then the rational function will be in the leading position. But yeah, Gulenko's type work, very temperament and club focused. I'm not saying he doesn't talk about other things. And I'm not saying he doesn't, yes, there is the Model G, but that is outside of just the basic, what I just explained about the social mission block. Like, he's not doing what like other theorists are doing, where they're very hung up on sort of actually applying function positions in this very sort of mechanical way. Like, he wants to zoom out and just look at the kind of, like, he's kind of like the ultimate, he's a god tier level vibe typer. That's his thing. Like, in terms of his type work, he's god tier vibe typer. That's his thing. He's not going to get super anal about, oh, this is the person's super ego, this is their, their super id, obviously. And yeah, he's in his type work, he's not really going to mention the Model A blockings or the Model G blockings. He's not going to be super anal about the function dichotomies as they apply to different positions. Like, yes, in his modelings, when he's making Model G, sure, he is looking at that. But like, what I am saying is that in his type work, he's not really doing that. All right. Thank you for watching.